Hey everyone, I'm Glue. Welcome to Runechant. Yeah, I gotta mess with the proportions a little bit, but Avon was nice enough to drop me some title art, right, to use. Just have to work out the right ratios. It's actually kind of weird because obviously you can only replace the Java edition, which in itself is kind of tiny. But yeah, what have I been up to, right? Because it's been a little bit since the last video, right, working on the affinity system. Well, I've been toying around with some back-end stuff, and I might have just done goofed, right? Yeah, so if you don't know what this is, right, this is your tick lag, and you don't want to be seeing all red. No, no, no. So our max is 166, and as you can see, our average is rising, rising, rising. So if we have a little entity here, you can see the ticks are updating very slowly between one another. That's why he sort of jitters and floats. Luckily, though, it's not so bad as to the point where we can't hit him. But yeah, so I've been trying to get this as low as possible, and a thought occurred to me. That is not the right one. What is it? No, it's Alt F3. Tried Alt F3 and it didn't work. So a thought occurred to me that should serve as a pretty good starting point for anyone wanting to make a data pack and wanting to obviously not see red. So I do have some other worlds. So we've got our test world. This is running the old version of the data pack. As you can see, the tick lag is better. Right, we'll just say better. It's not fantastic. It should average out pretty nicely. I think I have pruned a little bit and tinkered with a little bit, but once we get past those initial spikes upon loading, there you go. 15 and 19 for the max. We can hit the husk and he falls normally. Perfect. But what is my plan going forward to smooth this out? Well, we actually need to go back to the bad world, but I need to change one little thing in the files. So if we try and load it back up now, we should notice that, ta-da! Yeah, it's better. Hopefully it should drop below that 19 average as well, although we'll have to go past that second spike. Let's see, let's wait for it to float across. Obviously we can deal with the husk normally. We're at 13, and then it falls. No, red came again. Wait, I think I was looking around loading chunks when I shouldn't be, right? Because I want to compare the two. There's no point going through all this effort if it doesn't amount to a... Really? What's going on? What's the red line? Yeah, so it's definitely from looking around. Hopefully they both pass and the other one doesn't spike up and we can... No, never mind. Oh, right. At the very least, the average looks the same. To me, the green bars look lower. Don't know what the spike is. That's another thing I'll have to figure out. But what am I doing? What is making this a lot better to deal with? Well, I have sort of just condensed everything. So in a data pack, you might end up doing entity selection. So for instance, if you were to do executes at E and then you specify whatsoever, right? So you might want to look for items, you might want to look for NBT or tags or anything like that. Doesn't matter. As soon as you type in this command, execute at E, or if E, or as E, or anything E, it now scans every single load entity, regardless of whether or not they meet your selected criteria, right? It's still going to check every single entity, and that's what usually generates the most lag in terms of a data pack, is searching every single loaded entity. So you want to cut back on these commands, or you want these commands to then feed into at S, right? So you do as, and then at E, and then you would do at S. Okay, that way it's only doing the check once and then running the command off of whichever entity meets your check, and it's not rechecking any entities. Now, in terms of data pack, what you'd usually do, right, I think this is generally the common thought, is you'd segment your command sections so that they only run when necessary, right? So for instance, anytime you're checking an entity, you're only going to run that check when it's absolutely necessary. Now, what I've done is decided, well, I'm just gonna accept the baseline tick lag. There you go. 16, 17, so it's better than the 19. Yeah, so I'm just going to accept the baseline lag, right? So no matter what, if I end up just having a function that needs to run every tick, so it needs to check any entity every tick, for whatever reason it switches on for maybe 3 seconds here or there, or random interval, it doesn't really matter, right? It's still going to run, and then if I want another one, right, now I have 2. No matter what, at some point, if they run at the same time, I'm still going to have 2. So what I've done is I've decided just to have one running every single tick. Now, that sounds bad, doesn't it? Right? To have a function that we just went over as something you never want to do, running every single tick. So checking every single entity loaded in the world, every single tick. Yeah? Well, let's go over why it's actually not so bad, shall we? Right, so here is my old version of the data pack, if you will. So I have a bunch of these activators, right? So 1 minute underscore activate, 1 second underscore activate, and then all the different commands running off of that activate. If we open it, as you can see here, right, it runs every time a tick. So that's 1 out of 20 because it's counting up per ticks, and it's going to run this function, right? So I've got a bunch of these different functions that all run at different intervals. And I've tried to split them up as best as possible so they don't cause, too much tick lag. But eventually, as I continue to add more and add more and add more, it's going to build up and it's going to get worse and worse and worse. Hence why, we've dropped to 16 versus the 19 in this version. So what I've decided to do is just have 3 constantly running, right? Tick underscore entity, tick underscore none, and tick underscore player. Super simple. All it does is it runs as @s. So how am I doing that? Well, as you can see, I've also got the activator. Okay, so activator select entity, select none, and select player. So what this does is just one line, right? Execute as every entity currently loaded at their location, and then run the function tick entity. And then within tick entity, I can now search for any specific entity I want, but it won't rerun the check, right? It's already checking every entity once, so it doesn't need to rerun. It's just going to match the entities that it has selected, right? Because it's always executing as each individual entity. So what this does, as you can see, is cut down immensely on the lag. Because rather than trying to juggle and jump hoops and make sure that I don't have more than 1, 2, or 3 going every single tick, I now just have 1, right? We've just sucked it up and I just have 1 running every single tick. So I am checking every entity, every single tick. Okay, so if you load X amount of entities, yes, you're going to have a problem, right? But baseline, this is better than the old version of the pack. Now, I don't know if I'm doing too great of a job explaining, so let me scroll down to one of my ticks. So I should have tick activates at the A section, okay? So every tick, this function was running all these commands. Okay, it was just running these all commands flat, so to speak, right? So for instance, the armor attributes. It would run this command, then tick underscore armor attributes would run X thing per player. So what I've done instead, I've all tied it back to these activator commands. One runs as every entity, one runs as every player, right? So activator select player, and then one runs as nothing, right? So those are the 3 baseline functions that are running constantly. And because of that, I always have every single entity selected. I never have to recheck every single entity, and I can run X command off of said entities. So for instance, the big thing that has cut down the lag right now is I have this, right? We have @s item. Again, it's not rechecking every single item in the world because it's already done that once, right? And then it's running my drop crafting functions. Now, when we get the red is because I add these back in, right? So these are the rest of the functions that need to run off of every single entity. I haven't gone through and I haven't adapted all of the new functions. I've also neatened things up, right? So I have subfolders and I'm a bit more organized overall. Good habit to have. Make sure you do it from the start. But yeah, so I just have one command that's always running, always checking every single load entity. But because of that, I never need more than one command, right? And that's the big thing to me. Because if we go back to the old version of the pack again, right, we have tick.statusFX, right? Checks every entity. Okay, it needs to check if they have the statuses, and it needs to run the status effects. So I've used timers to try and split that up, but there are ones that run constantly, and there's one that runs if there's other conditions met, and all this and all that, and all together, right, in all of them, I will end up using @e. So if we go to the actual status effects, so life, for instance, right, uses @e. Now, I don't. I just use @s. Every single command I make, every single function I make, I just use @s. And then I designate it whether I want it to be the player, using, obviously, the player activator, or if I want it to be the entity, by using the activator entity, and I've lost track of where they all are. Right, there we go. And that way, again, I'm just checking every single entity once. Okay? So no matter how many functions I now add to the pack, I'm still only ever going to be checking every single entity once every tick. So yes, it creates this baseline level of lag at 16, because you can make packs that are less than this baseline. But I think at this point, at this pinnacle, right, of my pack creation, where I'm, again, constantly adding features, constantly adding things that are checking entities and doing this and doing that, and I'm trying to segment them across different timers, right? Just sucking it up and accepting that if I just check every single entity, every single tick, there's no issues whatsoever, right? Because again, that is the greatest amount of, sorry, technically it's the lowest amount of functions you could run. Right, again, yeah, if I spawn a bunch, eventually we'll get to the point where it becomes an issue, because obviously it's running off of a lot of entities. Actually, I don't think any of these are running off of mob entities. Because that's the other thing. The actual base function, oh, we got a little bit of spike, and it is going up slightly, right? You can sort of see the peaks go up slightly. But yeah, you're right. I don't know. Food for thought. What do you think? Am I doing it correctly? Again, right? This is my first real attempt at the data pack. Well, second if you include the command box stuff. But I do think this is the best solution, right? And I don't think I've found anything online helpful. I know that the constant thought is just to segment all your functions, right? So that they function sort of like a brain, right? They only activate the regions of the brain when you need them, when you need to recall information or do calculations or do whatnot. But I think this is probably the better way, right? Just to suck it up, have, again, a blanket command that is checking every single entity. That way I don't have to fear. I can add in whatever function I want, right? Because again, it's not going to add to the load of entity checks, right? The only thing adding to the load of entity checks is the amount of entities in the world. If for whatever reason I spawn in, 10,000 entities, well, that alone, Minecraft itself is going to struggle. But yeah, I think that's the best solution, right? If you've got an alternative one, love to hear it. Love different ways to improve my pack. But yeah, I also wanted to do this as sort of a update video, because I've spent the last week obviously retuning everything to this new idea, right? So I've had to go in, I've had to make sure to add the S's where it's relevant, segment the functions between the three different types, again, whether or not they need to activate on a player, activate on an entity, or just activate in general. Altogether, right, from what I have done so far, what is being managed, it looks like our tick lag is better, which is good. Again, if I were to save this, right, with these other sections, again, that I haven't fixed up yet, that's when we go back to it being really bad. Because again, the other issue you have off of this is it is running every command per entity, right? So to have X entity, well, you know what, if I go back to the word, right, if we pick one of these, okay, these are running off of every single entity, season, tick, environments, right? So if there's 100 entities in the world, this function is running 100 times, right? And then because in this function, I haven't said yet to at S, it's then going 100 by 100 by 100 and multiplying out of control. So as long as you do stick to that at S, right? So again, even here, they're all at S because I've already selected every entity. It should work out to be the better amount of tick lag, right? Just blanket checking every entity once and then running every single other command off of that, rather than rechecking every entity every time I want to perform something new, and then trying to rationalize and segment it according to X timer. Anyway, right, just a little update. Hopefully, my goal is next week to stream as much as possible, right, and get this done, because it's dragged on a bit too long, and I want to get the pack done, right? I want to start playing, I want to make a server, right, have some fun, but, there is still a fair bit to do, so I don't know if a week is enough. But I think that's my goal. I'm just going to put a little bit of a pause on making the other content that I usually stick on my channel and just focus on streaming the pack, keep myself motivated, and get done. But for now, I have some more tinkering to do to fix this up. Obviously, make sure it's all green, and then I can use the new scheme of making functions for everything new, which should also be a bit easier to write as well, right? Because I'm just, again, doing at S. I don't have to worry about thinking about specifically what has to target, what has to run when. It's just at S, gibberish, right? Anyway, hope you enjoyed. It's somewhat applicable, right? Hope you liked the idea. We'll go with that. Yeah.